All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. Wow, I believe this will be episode 48. It has truly been a long time coming and a journey in itself. Um, just want to take a moment before we get deep into this episode to thank you guys for your support and following me along this journey of figuring out um, what this podcast is going to be about, what you guys needed to hear, and what you guys wanted to hear from the many different stakeholders that I've had on here. So thank you from that. Um, but I'm not going to talk you guys to death. I have a very awesome guest on today. I'm excited to hear her story and her journey. So without further ado, have her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Shannon Urbon. I am the executive director for the new foster care, and I am excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, without further ado, I'm going to ask my first question, if you don't mind giving us a starting point for your experience into this work and working us to your expertise and what you do now.
Sure. So I am a lawyer by trade. So my first job out of law school was working with the Washtenaw County Public Defender's Office in their child abuse and neglect section. And I think when I went to law school, I knew I wanted to do something to make a difference. I didn't go to become, a high-powered, big money attorney. I always knew I wanted to use my degree to kind of give back. I had worked a lot in domestic violence prior to going to law school, so I thought maybe that would be the angle that I would take. My mother was an educator, so I also thought that potentially I might work in education law, but I landed in the child abuse and neglect section just mostly because I didn't want to do criminal. I thought that having somebody's life in my hands was not something that I wanted, not a type of power that I wanted to have. And so I thought helping kids that were, abused or neglected would be a better fit for me. And then it really just became my passion. So my first case there, I was working with a young man who was about to age out. He was 18, and back then they didn't have voluntary foster care. So he was aging out to homelessness. He had no family, and I just remembered feeling just such despair that there wasn't more that we could do to help, given I had just come on the case, so there wasn't a lot that I could have done at that point, but it just sort of sparked my passion for this population, I guess. And I went from there. I took a position as an attorney at the Detroit Center for Family Advocacy, which was a University of Michigan legal service program. And we worked on cases that were sort of collateral to a child welfare case. So we tried to, if there was a legal issue that was impeding a child's ability to get out of the system, then we would help with that collateral issue. So it would be something like a divorce, for instance, if there was domestic violence between the parties and the court was saying that they wouldn't return unless the parents were separated, then we would provide the assistance to do the divorce. We also did prevention work. So if there was a legal issue that could potentially result in a child being removed from the home, then we would assist on those issues. And that would look like something maybe like a landlord-tenant situation, where if they could just get that resolved, then there wouldn't be a risk of removal. And so I did that work for about 5 years. I started as a staff attorney. I was executive director for that program when it eventually closed due to lack of funding, which is unfortunately the way of the world in nonprofit work. And then from there, I went to Lakeshore Legal Aid, another legal nonprofit, and I landed at the new foster care in probably about 4 years ago now. And I've been here since then. I started as the director of legal services, and I'm now working as the executive director. That's a little bit of my
Wow.
trajectory.
Wow. We talk about the heart that social workers may have. We talk about the heart that teachers may have. And we also, talk about the heart that medical professionals may have. But when we think about the essence of lawyers, we don't typically talk about
Do
the kind
lawyers
of heart
have
that they
hearts?
may have. What kind of thing, and it kind of highlighted for me because I didn't know the ins and outs of the scope that lawyers may have outside of maybe being a GAL, and working around and supporting, the child welfare or abuse neglect cases and what have you. What would you say, in a nutshell, has been your why on this journey in your life, to keep you in this work?
I mean, I think I've had a lot of privilege in my life, but also I think I've seen some of the dark side of the world also. My mother was a survivor of domestic violence, and that sort of informed my work when I was younger. When I was in college, I worked at a domestic violence shelter, and I was sort of raised independently as a feminist. And so I really wanted women to have equality in the system. And so that was always my thought process when I first got into legal work. The funny thing is that at Detroit Center, I worked probably with 70% with fathers. And so it is funny how your work, the work that you do sort of changes the angle that you approach something, and so I became, from that work, a really strong advocate for fathers' rights, at the same time that I'm fighting for, women not, to be free from abuse and domestic violence. But seeing the other side of it, people are not, there's not stereotypes. Everyone doesn't fall into a stereotype, and so you can't really be for women and be against men. It doesn't work that way. Everyone's an individual. And so I think that I realized that my career wasn't going to be focused on one or the other. It was really going to be focused on improving people's lives, improving outcomes, and you can't improve outcomes for kids without helping their parents, and I think in child welfare, there really is that sort of dividing line where at least they try to make a dividing line. You either support kids or you support parents. You can't do both, and you either support the foster parents or you support the bio parents, but you can't do both, and I just think that is really not a true line that should be drawn. I think that you can support the youth, the child, at the same time that you're helping the parent. And I think my work at Detroit Center really put me on that side of that coin, where we really think, we believed, and I still believe, that you can't help the children without helping their parents. And a parent isn't bad just because their child was removed. I mean, there are bad people in this world, and there are situations where children shouldn't be returned home. But I would say that the majority of them are not that situation, and that if people get a little bit of help and support, they want to do better. They just don't know, and so much of it is a cycle. I was lucky to be raised. I mean, my parents were divorced, but my grandparents weren't. I was lucky to be raised with them as an example of family. And not everybody has that. Not everybody has models for parenting that they can look to. And I think that blaming parents for what's happened, and doing that extreme blame of maybe terminating parental rights, I think it happens a little too often. Whereas if people were given more of an opportunity and more support, they might be able to avoid that outcome. So I don't even know if that answers the question. I think I sort of took a circle.
Yeah, no, it's okay, because you taught us, you brought us in so many different aspects. And one thing that you spoke about is realizing at some point that, wow, like I'm working with more fathers than
Hmm.
mothers, and I'm from the city of Detroit, so that's not abnormal for me, you know.
Yeah.
But also the other aspect you talked about prevention, what that looks like,
Mm.
and what they have looked like for years. I know a lot of things have shifted, now where there's this focus on reunification and family because I can't speak today, family preservation. I believe I said that right.
Right.
Um, and really what that means is our child welfare system now in the state of Michigan, it's looking at ways to be able to preserve that family and just remove kids because of life circumstances where trying to get a job or deeming
Hmm.
things as neglectful because the lights were out and what have you, but providing resources to those families that and predominantly those minority families,
Right. Right.
that may fall prey to systematic, issues.
Right.
I appreciate you highlighting that and lifting that up. Um, Going because I think it's important. It's the perfect segue into going into what you do as an executive director and what the new foster care does, and the programs that you guys have. Um, if you'd like to speak to what is the new foster care?
Sure. So, we're a private agency. We are located in Bloomfield Township in Michigan. We also have a satellite office in Detroit at the Durfee Innovation Center. And our main program, so we have one direct service program currently, which works with youth with experience in foster care. So the only criteria to get into our program is that you had an experience in foster care. And we work with individuals who are ages 14 to 29. And it's a transition to independence program. The goal is to really empower these young people to have a successful life. And it's a wraparound service. We have what's called a transition navigator, which is, the case manager, caseworker, social worker that works one-on-one with the youth. We have peer support specialists, which are individuals who had experience in foster care themselves and now can serve as a mentor or a help for these young people to show also as an example of what success can look like. And then we also have, we call them personal wellness coaches, but they are therapists. We sort of try to hide the lead on that because a lot of times when you say the word therapist to someone who's had experience in foster care, they run screaming from the room because they've had really bad experiences with therapists in the past. And so we found in our program a lot of times the young people would say that they want to talk to someone, but they don't want a therapist. So personal wellness coach was a little bit easier for them to swallow. And so we work with them really just to help them develop a vision for what their future could be. I think that's something that, especially when they first get out of care, and especially for the youth that age out of foster care at 18, visioning their future is something that they're not doing. All of that they've heard at that point, because that usually if you've aged out, you've been through multiple placements, and in all likelihood, at the end of your case, you're in either an independent living program with other kids or you're in residential. And it's pretty difficult to see a blue sky after that there's a potential for a really positive future. And so a lot of our program is really helping them have the stability to be able to start thinking about what their dreams are and how they could achieve them. And then, we really support the very simple work, getting vital documents, helping find a stable living situation, helping what's transportation and employment and post-secondary education. And then we also do the work of helping them figure out what is a stable support system, what makes somebody a good support or a bad support. I think that's a lesson that you learn as an adult. And it's difficult to do when you need any support. I think when you're trying to pick people to support you from a very small number, you'll take any support that you can get, good or bad. And so we try to be a stable support so that they can then start to make decisions about, are the people in their lives supporting their vision or maybe detracting from it. But our program is not short term. It can go anywhere from 2 years to 8 years. So we understand that the trauma that these young people have gone through, it's not something that you're going to be able to fix in a year, make a difference in a year. So we're in it for the long haul. We really, I always joke when they do their intake that they are with us until they die, that they come in as a client and then they join our alumni and then maybe they join our board of directors and, they're with us forever. So that's my goal for the program. But we're really, as an agency, we're really trying to make a transformative change either in people's lives or in the system. And so we do that with our direct service program. And then we also partner with the state to bring innovative programming to Michigan. We are about to launch in partnership with the state Kinship Connections Pilot, which is a program that will try and get more kids placed with in their kin community rather than with potentially like strangers or licensed foster parents. I think that there's an obvious reason that kin placement is a better fit. But I think the statistics show out that children that are able to stay with kin, stay in their community, have better outcomes in the system, and that there actually are higher levels of reunification because they have more of a connection to their family, to their parents, than they do when they're placed outside of their family connection. So we're really excited. That program's going to be launching in June. And then we also work on legislative advocacy, policy initiatives, really trying, like I said, to support things that will actually be transformative and not, that won't just move the needle a little, but could have a large impact on the system as a whole.
Wow. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
You guys do a lot. You guys do a lot.
We do. We're all over the place.
Yeah. And some of the listeners, I actually have been a part of their program and utilizing services in the place when I was struggling with housing stability. And just the wraparound support and care and sense of family that was offered to me was undeniable. And that's one thing I could say, I appreciate about you guys and the work that you guys do. And I also know, I don't know if you still do this, but there was a point in time where you guys had partnered with community churches and what have you to have spaces for people to have parenting visits or sibling visits, and what have you. And I just think that's just so important, to even, do things like that, because we talk about that prevention yet again, how can we support the bio parents that, not, I know everyone's story is different, but support the bio parents that are trying effectively, really trying to either get their kids back or to show the state that, they have done their work, to retain their kids back. And if not them, kinship or other family resources and stuff like that. I've been speaking with other, directors and different people in the state level and also legislators. One thing I've found out throughout this is that, there's a lot of things when it comes to kinship or fit the kin, that, we got to work out as a state, especially with, supporting our kinships, not just saying, okay, well, you family, so you got this,
There you go.
but also, supporting them, helping them, whether it be financially, with a payment which is another payment that we give to our foster or adoptive parents, helping them with that payment, but also recognizing that payment in the state of Michigan hasn't been changed in some years,
Right.
So
Yeah.
supporting them in that fashion, but also recognizing that I used this analogy when I was speaking. I recorded with director Starley not too long ago. I
Mhm.
used the analogy that I remember back in the day where when a parent or a family feel short in their life or what have you, that everyone in the community would get together and put things into a box and bring it to that porch. And sometimes they'd drop it off, ring the doorbell, and nobody would be outside. Or sometimes they drop it off and
Mhm.
let them know that they're there. And what I imagine, private agencies, nonprofits, in this area, state agencies, is being that box for these family
Mhm.
and these children
Mhm.
at all aspects with biases out the door and non-judgment, and truly
Right.
just supporting the people in the population that they work with. Um, and that's where I see prevention happening at its best, and preservation happening at its best.
Mhm.
And I think me and you both did acknowledge that, there's some cases where removal is needed and imminent.
Yeah.
But also more times than not, we're seeing in cities like Detroit where there's removals because of the circumstances of life that it takes multiple jobs to
Right.
sustain. It takes, you know, and you guys can look this up, but it takes two minimum wage jobs to sustain a household,
Right.
you know.
For sure.
So,
If not
that is,
more.
man, apartment, costs less than a mortgage on the house, So,
Right.
it's,
Right.
it's, it's, it's truly, it's crazy, and to see that we have kids being taken away because, it's the ability to afford, yes, to be able to provide what the state deems, you know, what the state
Right.
deems
Right.
as this is how you're supposed to live. Because sometimes, not really deem that that person is a bad parent, So that's my little ramble.
I
That's my
think,
little rant.
yeah, no. I mean, I think you said one really important thing, which is like not being judgmental. I think that a lot of people approach this work and you can read a case file and think that you understand everything that's happened, but you can't. Nobody can understand, not even just what's happening right now in someone's life, but like how they grew up, what informed, what their support system looks like, how they were raised. I mean, all of that plays into these cases. And I think that you can't you can't place a judgment on someone just because they have CPS involvement or because they've had their child removed. And really, I mean, to carry that stigma forward too. I see so many cases where maybe a family's had, you know, too many CPS cases. And so now they're like, we're going to remove just because there's been too many cases, and where there's smoke, there's fire. And it's like, no, this is just a struggling family, and they're struggling a little more maybe than another family. And they just need a little bit more support and not removal of their children. Like, that's not going to fix this problem. Um, so, I think that for our team, and just for me, even as a lawyer, uh, you can't look at somebody's story and say you've seen it before or how it's going to end, because you don't. There's always going to be circumstances that catch you by surprise, or people that do things you didn't anticipate in a good way. I mean, obviously there's going to be bad circumstances, but we don't need to focus on those because the news tells us all about all of the bad circumstances. So
Yes, it does.
I think that cutting people some slack, it's not easy in this world, and making it clear that people are trying their best. Most people are not out here going, I would like to screw my kids up and I'd like to be a terrible human being. Most people are doing the best with what they have. And I think that prevention is about giving just a little bit of extra support and easy support. I think one of the things that people don't understand that come from more privileged backgrounds is that it's very difficult to maintain public benefits. It is not easy to, they act like, oh, everyone's just living off the system. No, it's so difficult to keep public benefits in place that it's almost a job in its own. So people are not trying to live off public benefits because it's so easy to do. They're doing it because they need it. They need that little additional support. And I think that people just need to change their perspective a little and not be so hard on individuals that are struggling. I think that we just need a little bit more kindness. We're a faith-based organization, and you mentioned earlier, how we used to partner with churches, which we still do, and I think that, for me growing up, church, obviously it lays a foundation for your morality and your values, but I think it's also that community, you have that additional support. And I think that that's a really important part of our program too, is giving the young people an opportunity to reconnect with the faith community if they have an interest in it, because the faith community does a lot to support kids in care, and they really want to be helping. And, even with our program where they're not necessarily in care still, people have a heart to help other people. They just don't necessarily know how to do it. But I think that churches can have a huge impact on the child welfare system by being that non-judgmental support, and following the teachings, of Jesus and loving your neighbor and, doing good. These are all simple, good things to do as a human being. So
Definitely. Yeah. I'm loving it. My next question here is, I know you guys work a lot with, transition age youth and those who have transitioned completely out.
mhm,
And, pretty sure as well as I know that a big percentage of those youth who are transitioning out have spent timeless amount of years, months in residential facilities. And
mm,
I love that you spoke about, we don't call our therapists because, of course, most of
mhm,
those youth, a high percentage, I don't know the specific statistic, but a high percentage of those specific youth who spend time in residential facilities have stigmas that have been created because of things that they have encountered in those different facilities and what have you. Um, and having a different perspective on mental health,
mhm,
in that journey, transitioning out into the community, and realistically, and I can speak from my own experience, but coming from a place of being institutionalized, and back into society and getting into a program like yourself to kind of find stable housing or try to, get a sense of community through whether it's a church or whether,
mhm,
it's another organization that maybe you guys partner with or what have you, to find that sense
mhm.
of community and social life and fellowship. Um, you know, if you could explain a little bit of what you see with the youth that may have been transitioned out or are out of care, and what are some of the themes surrounding that?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the saddest things is that, you know, the goal, I guess, of the system is that you're removing a child from a bad situation and putting them into something better. I would hope that's the goal. I think that we fail in that. I think that a lot of times, and especially the kids that age out of the system, are much worse off than they would have been if they maybe had just stayed under the radar and stayed with their parents. I don't have any statistics on that, but that would be my thought. I think that the trauma of removal, the trauma of moving from multiple different placements, different schools, being separated from your family, sometimes, indefinitely with a termination, that all takes a toll on a person. And so when they come out of the system, people are angry and they don't know what to do with that anger, and I think that it explodes out in situations that then end up in legal trouble, which, but it's like I was saying, I mean, you have to follow back to see where someone comes from to understand why they are where they are now, so a kid doesn't just, you know, get into a fight with someone over something simple for no reason. There's a background to that, and I think that that's what we see a lot. The outcomes for kids with experience in foster care, we have data by the time they're 21, 1 in 4 have experienced incarceration. I mean, that's 25%. That doesn't make any sense. There's a reason for that, and I think, 1 in 3 is homeless, unemployment rate of almost 50%, which is insane. 2 in 5, only 2 in 5 are going to graduate from high school, and 27% will have kids of their own by the time they're 21. So these outcomes are terrible, and how do you take those outcomes and then move forward to have a successful life? I mean, it just takes a lot to get from point A to point Z. And I think that it has to be a recognition of what came before, and then helping them to work through all of that trauma. And, we had a listening session recently with our youth. They talked a lot about being medicated while in care, being told by the doctors, take this pill, it will make you happy, and I just thought that was so profound, because how are they going to be happy when they're separated from their family, and maybe from their siblings? So how is a pill, going to make, and then you get addiction. One of our youth talked about then getting addicted to, to pills, where it's like, it makes sense. You're trying to find happiness in a situation that is not really constructed to make you happy. So I just think that it is surprising to me how resilient the youth that we work with are, considering what they've gone through, and it's really all of them. I mean, even if you are only in foster care for a day, there's trauma, there's an impact psychologically from that. And overcoming that, stability, you can help someone find an apartment, you can help them find a job, you can, open up some educational opportunities, but for them to be successful, they have to be able to deal with all of the psychological, impacts of their past. And this goes not just for kids in care, this goes for everyone, obviously. I'm a big proponent of therapists. I talk openly with my team about having a therapist, because in the work that we do, it's very important to have someone to talk to. But even if you don't work in this type of area, I think therapy is just helpful for people in general. Like, work on yourself. You can better give back to the world if you are have a better understanding of who you are as a person. We start these questions and then we end up way over here on the side.
It's okay because you're not straying away from the general sense of, there's many different components in supporting our youth and our families, and there's a lot of different angles and scopes to support them. The statistics are steadily alarming,
Yeah.
And when you look at the statistics as an alumni, when I look at the statistics, I just be like, man, they are kids, and I guess I can say, and not being true, I can say that, they are kids, because I know some people are like, you a kid yourself, what you mean? But they are kids coming directly out of the system, coming out of placement and getting, trying to supplement pain with substances,
Right.
or toxic relationships that lead to domestic situations or what have you, and it's just this pipeline of effect. And, some end up as young parents, and yet they have yet to find a sense of identity in themselves. And, some of you guys are like, what do you mean, Michael? What are you like? How have they went this long and they've aged out of the system and yet to find identity? When you're in a placement, or even sometimes a foster home, you are told to move a certain way, walk a certain way, and what have you. Nonetheless, if the court is involved until you transition out, you definitely got to move a certain way, go to this court hearing, do this therapy visit, be on this med, and all these different things. And that doesn't happen in a normal home. There's room, mistakes, failures, without being like told that, no, you may need this medicine or what have you. Granted, I do believe that in some cases that medicine is needed, but also I do believe that there's an
Mhm.
over medication when it comes to people being in the foster care system because we want to make them to a point where they're stable or likable to
Yep.
be in a home, or
Yep.
they're not causing issues on a unit or in a facility, and stuff like that. So now this person gets out and they finally have a choice to not take those meds. And more times than not,
Right.
they don't take the meds.
They
So
don't take
now
the
they're in,
meds.
you know,
Mhm.
more times than not, when they get out, they're like, yeah, bump this,
Yep.
And for
They'll be
one,
like, I'll take meds. I'll take this joint and smoke it.
right, right, and,
Take my own
and,
meds.
and they finally, like, you say some go through withdrawals because some people be on some heavy medication,
For sure.
and it's not healthy to just stop taking them. But some that does stop taking it are finally at a place where they're not doled down. So
Yeah.
they get
Well,
out
and it's
there
that
and they
independence.
man, yeah,
Like
and
they come out and they're like, I want to make a decision. I was told I had to take meds.
yeah,
This is the only decision I can make is to say no, I'm not doing it. And I think that with a lot of our young people, I always tell them, look, you're an adult now. You decide if you want to take medication or not. You decide if your diagnoses are impacting your life in a way that medication might help. But I was like, but also as an adult, one benefit you have is you're working directly with your doctor. If you're having side effects you
hmm
don't like, then you call your doctor and you talk about it. This isn't a situation where you're being told you have to take this med and this dosage and you have no choice. You're in charge of it now. So we always try and inspire the youth to get a new psychological, get a new psychiatric evaluation, and look at it. I don't know if I assume for you, if you ever had a psychological or psychiatric when you were in care, did you ever see the results of that psychiatric or psychological?
I
Right.
mean, so I've never actually seen a physical because I can't speak today, psychologist. Like I've always, when I was in placement, it was a virtual psychologist that was from a whole other state,
Oh, wow.
you know, that
Right.
gave me a prescription and I was told I either take
Right.
this, like, or I don't.
And you're like,
If I don't,
okay.
then I'm probably getting in trouble with court or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and I believe, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people who have similar experiences where they haven't seen a physical psychologist, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Or the report. Hiding the
like, what's
report
wrong with
from
me?
the
Like, what?
person, yeah. And it's so sad, with one of the youth I was working with, I said, like, here's your psychological, let's go over it, and he was
hmm
just like, why would I want to go over it? I'm like, it's about you, like, it's all
hmm
about you. It's information that you probably want to have just to make decisions, I mean, these are, and you explain too, like, these are recommendations. It says recommendations. This is not an order. This is not something you're required to do. This is what they're recommending. And you have to decide if the recommendations fit with what you want, So I think that's a big deal too, is giving people power over their mental health and their medical health, but
hmm
so much of that is like sharing results, like we're not going to suggest you get a psychological, then we're going to get the report and hide it from you. It's not even our report, it's your report,
hmm
So I think that the young people, I think one thing we try to teach is like, you have autonomy now, you're an adult now, and that comes with a lot of responsibility, but also you have choices, and yes, you can make the choice not to take medication. And some people can do that. A lot of people don't need medication to manage their mental health. Some people can't, and I think that
hmm
that's what we try and get across. You have a choice, but you have to look at what's happening. Are you being successful in your life? Are you able to reach your goals? And is the reason that you're not maybe have something to do with your diagnosis? But it's
Definitely.
not just a take this med and everything will be perfect, because it's not. Medication is not going to fix everything.
hmm And I appreciate you, dropping those nuggets. I like to call us dropping those nuggets. Man, that
Oh. Oh, I think
I,
we're back.
I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
um, but I'm gonna restart from what I just said. I just think it's important as the caseworkers that may be listening to this is having those conversations when a youth or a youth is getting ready to transition out, and talking to them about all the different choices that they may have in adulthood, so they're not just abruptly bombarded when they get out with like, there's so much I can do, because when that independence strike, and you have to have a sense of freedom, like even as a
Mm-hmm.
like teenage freedom, and then you just put
Right.
into adult freedom, like your mind goes on, and then this probably be a terrible analogy, but it's 80 brain. Like, it's, you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to do this, you want to do
Yep.
that, and it's hard to truly focus on one centered thing. And rightfully so, rightfully
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
So I truly want to promote, for those, caseworkers, have those conversations, promote those dialogues beforehand to prepare those youth, but also to those youth and, young adults that may be going through this, slow down, bring yourself back
Yeah.
in, reel it in, you know. The statistics are there, some of you guys may be, you know, in a place where you're using substances to sustain the pain and not deal with the trauma and what have you. I want
Mm-hmm.
to, be one of the first people to say that, it gets to a point where you gotta switch it up. You know,
Yeah.
um, you gotta think about what you want your life to be and what aspect do you want to actually be able to be self-aware. So get that mental health exam, for yourself. Figure out what you need, what is helpful for you, you know, and go from there. You get the choice when you age out to finish writing your story or rewrite
Mm-hmm.
what you want that outcome to be.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, man.
Wow, that's great. Great advice. Yeah. I think, and I think too, like rewriting your story, just your story has not been written. I mean, teenage to 18, that's just a blip. You have
Mhm.
so many years past that, in all likelihood to decide who you want to be as a human. So I would say also, cut yourself some slack. We've all made mistakes, most mistakes you can come back from, and even if it feels like one that you can't, sometimes it's just time. Time will take care of, it heals all wounds, as they say.
Definitely, definitely. As I get ready for my last couple of questions, I just want to say it's been such a pleasure to be able to communicate, and hear from your personal experience, and um, you being open, and not just sharing your experience, but also, sharing the stats that you have seen and the themes that you have seen in your work. I think it's truly important, as I'm on this journey and talking with many people, it's great, you know, it's great to be able to hear the voices of alumni and in their
Mm-hmm.
experience and provide a space that is safe for them to be able to share their truths. But that will only be half of the story if I stop there. So building this podcast is important that I don't just bring the people who have lived experience. I bring the people who are surrounded around the people who have lived experience.
Mm,
The programs, the supports, the resources, the judges, the caseworkers, the GALs, and then some, because we need to see our system at whole face value, to be able to see the
mm,
issues that may be there, but also to see the positive things that are working and have been working, so we can all come together. And I also believe that there's sometimes a negative narrative promoted, and stigmatized on, child welfare, and people who work in child
mm.
welfare not really wanting the good for families or the parents, or either one side or the other, like you spoke about
Yeah,
earlier. That's not true. The of the goal of anyone that works in child welfare is to help. At
yeah,
the end of the day, it's to help. Their why may look different. The reasoning may have a different kind of way of explanation, but the goal is to help. And support in however way they can. You know, I don't know
hmm
anyone that chooses to work in this arena that is just woke up and like, yep, we just doing this today, I guess.
yeah.
You know.
I know our founder always jokes. So I'm sure you got into this for the money, right? Like, which is so
Yeah.
true. Like, nobody's doing child welfare like because you're getting paid so well and the benefits are so great. Yeah, I mean, you have to have a heart for this work, to get immersed in it. If you don't, then they're not going to stay if they were in it. I've been in it for over a decade now. I don't see myself switching out at any point.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, unless we can fix the system, that's the hope, obviously.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Any last comments, that you may have? Well, let me back it up. What's
Okay.
next for the new foster care and yourself?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that we're going to keep working on expanding our services. So, right now, we just serve Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne counties. Ultimately, our founder would like the Bridge Transition Program to be statewide. So that's a goal that we have probably in the next 5 years. We're still in the middle of our pilot period, trying to prove out the model that we're utilizing. So once we get some good solid data out of it, we'll be looking to expand. And then I'm, being the lawyer that I am, I really want us to go a little deeper into legal services. There's a big move across the country doing CPS defense, so pre-petition work. I think that has a real opportunity to change the system with true prevention. I think if people had a lawyer during the CPS phase, they would have more of an opportunity to, just be better advocacy for the needs of the family. So I would like to see that sort of take off in Michigan. I know there's some pilots out there that are working in that area, but I would like to see us get a little more immersed in prevention. And I think that CPS defense, legal defense, would be a good start to that. And then, we're always on the lookout for ideas, legislation, policy, what's working other parts of the country, what's working other parts of the world that could come to Michigan and improve our system. I think that it is a bit of a joke to say we're going to fix the system, but there has to be a way to do it. I mean, there has to be. I'm optimistic that there are things that can be done to make the system, better for the people that are involved in it. And so that's, part of our mission is to find those things and try to bring them to Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you for that. What tips and tidbits can you offer people who work in this arena, and also for the people with lived experience?
I think for people that work in child welfare, self-care is really important. I talked about therapy before, but I think that it's a high burnout profession. You're taking on other people's trauma. It's really hard not to if you have any kind of heart or empathy. So I think that being very thoughtful about self-care is one way to have a long career in this area. And then I think, like I was saying before, try not to prejudge a case, a person. I think that you read a case file, you might have an idea of how things look based on your experience, but you just never know. And how you interact with someone is part of what could make the change. I mean, people respond more to someone that they feel is an advocate than they do to someone that they feel is prejudging the situation. So your interactions can impact the outcome just as much as what the allegations are, if that makes sense. And then for youth, I think just to say that the sky, like, there's still so much potential. I think if you come out of care and you just feel like there's no future for you, it's just not true. I mean, you may have a lot to overcome, but it is entirely possible for you to have a very strong, successful, wonderful future. And that success it comes in many shapes and forms, and so maybe, you're not going to be the next LeBron James, if people even talk about him anymore, but I'm not really a sports person, but like that, you can have like whatever success. I think one of the things we always talk about is like, you define your own success, and so take pride in small wins, take pride in big wins, but that there's a lot of opportunity. There still is the American dream. It's not the same for everyone, and the opportunity is not there for everyone, but there still is potential. And don't let your past define you, and try to find a good support system of people that believe in you. And if you can't find one, come check out the new foster care.
Definitely. I just want to say once again how much it's an honor and a privilege to be able to hear your experience and your story, but also to hear what the new foster care is doing and also your expertise behind it. You guys are doing such great work to support not only the youth and the people with lived experience, but the parents,
Yeah.
and that's a side that we don't typically hear or see because of the stigmas and the narrative that's promoted, that everyone who gets their kid taken away or something happens and stuff like that, that they did something wrong, and what have you. And I appreciate you breaking that down for us today, and having that dialogue, to kind of explain that that's not always the case. A lot of neglect cases are because of income issues,
Right.
and what have you. If not even income issues, there's a lot of neglect cases because of medical things that happen to a parent,
Mm-hmm.
and what have you. So there's a lot of ins and outs. So one thing, I want you guys to take from this, some people who are listening and audience members, is that there's no one size shoe, when it
Right.
comes to
Exactly.
foster care and the child welfare system. That isn't like this is just everyone's story. This is it. That's not the case. Everyone's story is very unique in their own. From the parents to the foster parents to the adoptive parents to the youth. And the alumni. To the caseworkers and what have you. So please, one thing I want to encourage today as you have listened to this is that please check your biases, in this field,
Mm-hmm.
as a caseworker, as a stakeholder, what have you, but also to my brothers and sisters, my alumni, check your biases too,
Yeah.
because we tend to use our trauma and promote, judgment and biases too. So, we both have some work to do and a part to play in this. We've talked about a lot of things today,
We did.
the after effect of, aging out and what have you. So one thing I want to say is if you're a person that's in care or getting ready to age out or you have aged out, and, some of those things we talked about is your story right now, um, look for resources, get support. I know there's a lot of stigmas cultural wise and society wise, and some that we place on our own, with mental health support or any kind of support. Sometimes what we got to do is suck our pride up and get help. You know, I definitely don't want to see anyone else fall prey to any of the statistics that are out there that negatively affect our population. So there's resources out there. Get help. Get support. You guys can reach out to my social media. I'm more than willing to, support you guys and try to get you guys, connected to wherever you are. You know, I don't know specifically, Shannon, what is the new foster care information if they are in Michigan? How can they get a hold of you guys? I don't know if he can still hear me. No. But I believe if you Google, if you Google the new foster care, if you Google the new foster care, you'll be able to find resources and connect with their phone and their email. Such a great program, as Shannon spoke about before, wraparound services, not just for, youth and alumni of care, but also for parents and other supports and stuff like that. So be sure to look into that. Lastly, I just want to say thank you guys for your continued support, and helping me along this way with this podcast. And yeah, she's back, so I'm gonna have her. How can they get a hold of you guys if they're in that area of service?
Yeah, so probably just the easiest way is to go to our website. So it's www.thenewfostercare.org. And we have a referral form link right on there, or you can give us a call, 248-884-7645.
Thank you. Any last comments, you would like to leave here today or anything?
No, I just, I appreciate you having me on. This is a really great conversation. I really appreciate the work that you're doing to lift up voices, for kids that went through the similar experience to you. And then also those of us that are, trying to improve the system, doing the work on the other side.
Thank you. The privilege is totally mine.
No way.
But yes, you guys know, as I end out, COVID is out there and is doing its thing. Also monkeypox is out there too.
Oh, no. No, don't say it.
So
don't
please, so please take care of yourself. Make sure that you're following the right precautions. Stay healthy. Please stay safe. Make sure that you're doing what you need to take care of your village. By doing that, you help take care of this bigger village that we call, the world. So just please do that, accordingly. Also, mental health is important. We all have a part to play in breaking the stigmas and the labels that are placed on it. So, have these conversations with your families, with your friends, in school, in these places, to be able to break those down, because we all need help someday. It doesn't mean that you have an issue. It doesn't mean that this or that or the third. It just means that we all need help, and support, and that looks different for each and every one of us. It has been a pleasure. I hope that you guys have a great night, great morning, great evening, great car ride to work, great car ride back home from work. Whenever you listening to it, just let it be great. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.